So we're here to talk about the practice of control, and having covered the principles of control, I think I'm going to do a quick recap with you to make sure that you've got those principles sorted, because they define what it is that we need to understand when we talk about what control actually looks like in a business organization. So let me share the screen with you. First things first, if you understand the principles of controlling, then we can continue to talk about control as it arises in the finance function, the marketing function, the people function, and the operations function of a business. But the recap detail is that you understand the definition, and that you know that we're talking about controls which can be feed forward or concurrent or feedback. You understand also that the controls arise in terms of output controls and behavioral controls and cultural controls. You have spent some time looking at the types of control there are with regard to each of these dimensions, and you know that we observe people, which can cause problems, and we get people to give us feedback. Sometimes the feedback can be oral or written, and sometimes it comes from what a computer can tell us when a computer is monitoring what is actually happening in a business. Now, if you comprehend those things, if you have that sorted, then I can remind you of something we've done before, and you know the 4 functions of the business demonstrated like this, with support activity over here and core functions over here. Core because this is where the money is made, whereas this support function strip, if you like, across the top of the diagram is about how we carry the business along. At the time when I presented this to you some weeks ago now, I pointed out that there were primary activities, and I went into some length with those activities. What we're going to do over here now is take portions on this, okay? And looking at those portions, we know that if we're talking about money and financial controls, and it's about sourcing and investing and maintaining money, then there must be something that someone says. This is where I spend most of my time in this particular session with you. And Ellen Benowitz talks about how the decision to establish a particular process of a particular type and size and scale is something which costs money. And if it costs money, then what we want to do is find out whether the money we've invested is doing what we would like it to do. There is another author I present to you here, Body, talks about measuring periodic performance. So where Benowitz has said, let's have a look at the profitability of a business, Body says, let's measure that periodically. In other words, every month. So most organizations will produce what they refer to as their monthly management accounts at the end of every operating month. So here, talking to you as I am in October, certainly by between the 7th and the 12th or thereabouts of November, company accountants in companies, both large and small, are going to have produced a periodic report for the period October, saying this is whether we've the amount, this is what we did in terms of the amount of money we made or lost, as the case might be, in the period of October. I say this to you, that there's a series of principles you need to become familiar with. And the first is that we get money from customers. And obviously, if you have more customers, you enjoy more revenue or income, sales. And there are conventions in accounting which say that we have to treat this revenue from customers in a very particular way, which is distinct from the way we treat money which comes in from shareholders. as I've explained to you, we sell shares in a business to shareholders, and they expect to make some sort of money off that. They can make their money in two ways. They can make their money out of shares of the profit. So if they have 10% of the shares in a business, they are entitled to 10% of the profits that are distributed by the business, because the company management decide whether to distribute the profit or not. If it is distributed, then they make a return. And if the business has made a lot of money, they will enjoy a handsome return. If the business has made very little money, they will not enjoy a return at all. This money that shareholders put into a business is what we refer to as equity. Okay? If the business loses money, then there's a good chance that if the business does so badly and never recovers, that people that the business buys goods and supplies and materials from decide to close it down by following a legal procedure of placing the business under provisional liquidation and eventually having it declared bankrupt. The shareholders might never see a cent of their equity back. In other words, there's no guarantee that your equity will ever be repaid. So I will also tell you that you get money into a business from lenders, and lenders expect their money to be repaid. If you go to First National Bank as a lender and you say, may I borrow money for my business, they'll expect it to be repaid by a particular point in time, and they'll expect you to repay them periodically. And there's like periods of financial reporting. You have a financial period of October month that you report on in November. In the same way, all the interest that is accumulated on the money you borrow from a bank during October has to be repaid by the end of October or in early November. So shareholders don't get paid automatically, but lenders do have to be paid automatically because it's part of the contract that they have with your organization. That means, and some of you will have detected this, it means that there's opportunity to decide in a business where you get your money from. You could decide to get your money from lenders, or you could decide to get your money from shareholders. If the interest rates that you pay on borrowed money are very low, then it makes sense to get your money from lenders. If interest rates are very high, then it makes more sense to get your money from people who buy shares, because the profits that you share with them, which you are not obligated to share with them if the business hasn't made enough profit, is a lower cost than getting your money from a bank which says you will pay me the monthly amount, which comprises both capital portion of the loan as well as an interest portion of the loan. This is something we call gearing, and it's vital for every enterprise. But once you've raised capital in the form of borrowed money and debt equity that you've obtained from shareholders, you have to do something with it, and the money has to work. And if the money is working, what the money does is earn for the business a profit, and the profit that it can earn is based upon what activity you perform. So you might decide, for example, to make motor cars, and that would be your investment decision. Or you might decide to establish a car wash, and you buy equipment, and then you have to sell car washes. And if you are going to buy and sell or make and sell cakes, for example, then we have to decide what sort of raw materials you need and what sort of baking equipment you need to run your baking business. What we do in every business is make a manager we call a financial manager, responsible for monitoring what's going on and how that money in the business is actually working. That is their domain. The financial managers control the money in the business, and that would be the investing portion. But we also speak about the maintaining portion, and this becomes absolutely essential. because you get your money in from customers, but you have to pay some of it out to your suppliers, and you pay some of it out to your staff in the form of wages, because if you are not paying the people that you owe money, then there's the risk of the people you owe money taking you to court and obtaining a judgment against you for the payment of the debt, at which point in time the company which is owed, or the supplier which is owed money, is entitled to ask for relief in the form of having your goods claimed by the sheriff and then put up for sale, so that any proceeds of your goods can be paid out to the people who are owed money. And that's a very unpleasant business indeed. So the point is that you're not just sourcing money and you're not just investing money, but you're also trying to maintain the money that has been raised. With this in mind, I'm going to say that the goal, finally, in summary, if you like, of a financial manager is to ensure that the business can keep on operating, and that it makes enough profit to pay investors, and that it makes enough money to repay lenders. Okay, so with the money part out of the way, I'm going to talk to you about a core function, and the core function is marketing. And I'm saying that marketing as an activity is about sourcing and supplying and satisfying customers. And Benevitz says that what we're doing then is not attempting to control the customer, but controlling the process by which the customer can be kept content, so that they don't switch their allegiance to another supplier. In other words, if you're a regular shopper at Checkers, what Checkers is doing with marketing controls is ensuring that you don't go to Spar or Pick and Pay. It's as much as I want to say on it at this point in time. I'm going to ask you to look at more detail in your prescribed text. The people function, also a support function, as you know. I have what Benevitz has to say over here, and she maintains that managers contribute to the effective and productive and efficient utilization of the human resource by making sure that goals are set, clearly understood, and that policies and procedures are in place to help guide worker actions, and that there are performance appraisals of staff, that their performance is improved through coaching, and that there is regular development assessments to figure out whether they can be used for something else. Benevitz's chapter is a good one, and I've made it available to you under a fair use policy agreement. You must, even if you don't read the prescribed text, I really strongly recommend to you that you read Ellen Benevitz's chapter. Now, we're looking at operations and the control in operations. Remember, you're sourcing resources, setting them up and converting them. And if that's what you're doing to deliver products, then what's essential over here in making stuff is that you control capacity and standards and materials and scheduling and control. So I have a picture for you. I think it's a useful one. And you'll pick this up out of your prescribed text. And if we look at each of these features, if you like, then we're talking first of all about capacity. And capacity is about how much of something you can do. So the university, for example, has classrooms which are of a limited size. We can't put more than 300 people into our biggest classrooms. Some classrooms are only sufficient for 100 people, which means we can put no more than 100 students into a 100-seater venue. And factories are devised in much the same way. In other words, there's a maximum amount of stuff you can make in some factories. Some factories can make more than others. Some factories can make very little. That's a decision which is related to the investment that was originally made and how much resource capacity there would be, or operating capacity there would be. So that's what capacity is. Standards are about the quality of what you're trying to make. So is it a bit rough around the edges? Not such a good standard. Or is it a really high quality piece of kit? And what we're attempting to do over here is to produce as much as possible at a level of quality which is adequate for the customer. And as I've written here, a quality standard is embedded in the specification of the product or service delivered to the customer. Now, that being the case, you are looking at the materials you have. So are you using high-grade materials or low-grade materials? You're looking at the schedule by which you would produce. Are you going to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year? That means you're going to have a lot of workers, because some will be working day shift and some will be working night shift. You can't expect someone to work night shift for 7 nights a week for 365 days a year. So you realize that you're going to be rotating staff and employing probably more than 2 sets of people. You probably have to employ 3 sets of people for every 8 hours of a 24-hour shift. So a mixture, in other words, as I've written here, of planning and controlling. Please use your textbook to guide you with this. And we talk about control as an intention to check to see if things are working out all right. And it is a business of setting objectives, of measuring, comparing, and acting. And if we do that, then you might have something that looks like it's a business which is going to work. Let's have a look at a summary of all of this, shall we? So I'm saying to you that if we to reflect on this, then controlling finance is about monitoring profitability and liquidity and the cost of capital. That marketing is about monitoring customer satisfaction and what customers actually want and what they need. That human resource management and control is making sure that people comprehend their role in the business. In other words, what their value add is, the thing that I go on and on about with you. Policies and procedures, performance appraisals, and performance improvement and development assessment. And operations control is about objectives and measuring and comparing and acting on exceptions. Thank you for watching this video.